Okay, let's unpack this. Have you ever wondered what it truly takes to master an ancient art form? Beyond just the graceful movements we see.
Right, like what's really going on underneath?
Exactly. What lies in those years, those decades of dedication, the lineage secrets, maybe even the surprising physics of power.
Mm-hmm.
Today, we're diving deep into the profound Tai Chi Chuan journey of Damon Bramich. We're drawing from this really extensive interview, just packed with personal anecdotes and fascinating technical detail.
Yes, quite a resource.
Our mission really is to extract the core insights. What is traditional Tai Chi training? What are the hidden layers? And what kind of mindset does it really demand for mastery?
And what's fascinating here, I think, is how this deep dive reveals not just what they do in Tai Chi, but the why. Why it matters. It connects that ancient wisdom with a very modern, almost scientific understanding of the body and mind.
A complete system.
It really is.
Okay, so let's start maybe with the foundations, the historical context, the key figures in Yang-style Tai Chi.
Good place to start.
Our source material, it points out that traditional lineage, well, it can be way more complex than those neat charts you sometimes see.
Oh, absolutely. Things get left out or simplified.
Right. Like, it mentions Yang Shenpu, the third son, who was sent to Shanghai to spread the art. That was crucial. And interestingly, his size, he was apparently quite large, maybe 320 pounds.
Yeah, big guy.
That actually helped him establish himself initially. But then it gets even more complex, talking about figures often removed from the public charts, like Yang Za and Yang Zafen.
Mm-hmm. Names you don't always hear.
And the source says Sigong, who's foundational in Damon's lineage, actually started training with Yang Zapan, a direct descendant of the original founder, when he was super young, like 7 years old by Chinese counting.
Wow, from 7. That really underscores the depth of, well, what they call transmission, doesn't it?
That's the perfect word. So what is transmission in this context? Because it sounds like more than just teaching.
Oh, it's much more. And it's often deeply misunderstood, especially in the West. This isn't like downloading a file,
Right. Not a weekend workshop.
Definitely not. The source puts it bluntly.
Yeah.
You don't get a transmission in a weekend, probably not in 10 years, maybe not even in 20 for a lot of people.
20 years, okay.
It's far beyond just verbal lessons. The absolute critical part is the feel, the touch. It's this nonverbal transfer of physical understanding, of internal connection.
Like learning by osmosis almost?
Kind of, but very directed osmosis. Take Ting Jin, that sensitivity drill. People often see it and think it's about pushing.
Yeah, you see that a lot.
But it's not really. It's a basic following drill. It's about developing sensitivity, listening to the other person's body. It's not about trying to dominate or look good.
So pushing people around, especially beginners.
It's completely counterproductive.
Yeah.
Pushing students who are clearly, disconnected or unstructured just to make yourself look good, that completely misses the point of real transmission. It actually hinders their learning.
That clarifies so much, and this focus on deep tactile understanding. It must shape that initial training period you mentioned. Sounds incredibly demanding.
It is. The traditional method, the source says it was something like 7 years just on the form.
7 years before push hands.
Before you even start push hands,
Yeah.
7 years of refining that solo sequence.
Wow. Damon even shared this story, right? About an old video.
He did. He put out a video of his Yang-style form from 1992 and apparently called it appalling.
That's honest.
But he did it to show the growth, the journey over time, which really highlights this idea of unlearning to learn.
Unlearning. What does that mean here?
It means you have to change your ingrained habits, literally rewire your nervous system, how you move naturally. You have to master these incredibly precise hand positions, the internal structure.
It's not just choreography.
Not at all. And it's also about understanding physics and gravity in a new way. In Tai Chi, gravity isn't just pulling you down, it's seen as resistance.
Resistance, okay.
Which is a key reason the movements are often so slow. You're not just moving through air, you're actively working with gravity, with that resistance, to build internal connection and strength.
So slow movement equals intense internal work.
Exactly. It's developing internal power, not just external muscle.
Okay. And getting deeper into this requires more than just technical skill, right? You mentioned the inner circle.
Right. Being invited into that deeper level of training. It's not just about how well you can do the form, it's about character. It's about developing a real connection with the teacher.
So personality matters.
Hugely. And showing a true understanding of the body, not just mimicking shapes. And there were often specific requirements. For Damon, early on, it was explicitly not doing other styles.
Really? He had to choose.
Yeah, he actually made a conscious decision to move away from Choi Li Fut, which is another well-known martial arts system, back in '93.
So that commitment was like a signal.
It signaled his seriousness, his readiness to dedicate himself fully to this path, which is often a prerequisite for that deeper inner door training.
That's fascinating. And his first interactions with his Sifu, his teacher, they sounded intense from the get-go.
Absolutely. He first went to Perth in '96, and even before he was a formal disciple, he was doing these intensive private lessons, sometimes 6, maybe even 10 hours a day.
10 hours, wow.
Yeah. And the conversations weren't just technical. They revolved around diligence, respect, perseverance. Sifu was clearly assessing those qualities.
Laying the groundwork for discipleship.
Exactly. And it's maybe useful to clarify terms here. Tudi is often translated as disciple, but technically it just means student.
Oh, interesting.
Discipleship in this context, it wasn't seen as the end goal, like I've arrived. For someone like Damon, it was more a step, permission for deeper learning, another rung on the ladder.
Still climbing.
Always climbing. Sifu also used this term water to describe a kind of internal fluidity, emphasizing that deeper understanding means being more adaptable, more flowing within the structure.
And Damon demonstrated this dedication externally too, right? Through competition.
He did. He started competing in Australian all-styles martial arts events, and apparently did very well, winning overall forms and weapons titles.
Using Tai Chi against other styles.
Yeah, using fast forms, really low stances, and phaging that explosive power, making Tai Chi look surprisingly dominant against things like karate and kung fu.
Because they're not just slow, gentle movements.
Definitely not. That commitment eventually led to 2 disciple ceremonies. The first was private, at Sifu's home.
More intimate.
Right. Then, a couple of years later, there was a much larger public ceremony in Handan, China. This was during the Big Yang Luchin 200th anniversary games. Big names were there, like Master Tensel. It was a significant public acknowledgement.
That sounds like a huge moment.
It really signifies that profound work ethic Damon talks about. The idea that nothing is given to you, you need to learn it for yourself. The teacher is there to facilitate, not just hand things over.
They guide, but you do the work.
Precisely. And this whole process deepened the relationship immensely. Sifu actually became like a mentor and even a father figure for Damon, especially after Damon's own father passed away around 2000.
That's a powerful bond.
It really speaks to the holistic, almost familial nature of these traditional teacher-student connections. It goes way beyond just instruction.
So as the training got deeper, things must have evolved. I read that Damon even started, maybe challenging isn't the right word, but questioning Sifu on technical points.
Yeah, the source mentions he pissed him off sometimes by questioning foot positions or movements in class.
Is that okay in that kind of relationship? Or was that risky?
That's a really good question. In genuine traditional training, it's often not about blind obedience. Challenging the teacher respectfully with a real desire to understand can actually be a sign of deep engagement.
It shows you're thinking, not just copying.
Exactly. It shows you're trying to internalize the principles, not just mimic. This apparently happened a lot during really rigorous single-hand push hands training. Sifu's standard was absolute perfection.
No room for error.
None. The body's response had to be instant and correct, aligned perfectly with the classics.
Yeah.
Neutralized by turning the waist, then respond immediately in attack. It had to be automatic.
Which brings us to this idea of softness in Tai Chi. It's often misunderstood, isn't it? People think it means being weak or floppy.
It's absolutely not weakness. The source describes it as serenity, like the feeling of holding a baby. You're alert, connected, but completely relaxed within the structure.
Serenity, okay, that's different.
You need that profound internal structure to be soft. You can't be soft if you're about to fall over.
Yeah.
A core principle here is Sung, S-U-N-G, which basically means releasing tension in a joint, allowing the kinetic chain to be free.
Releasing, okay.
And Damon realized, after maybe 10 years, that this understanding started to connect with his other knowledge anatomy, massage, sports therapy. It all started clicking together.
The crossover.
Right. The paradox is the body has to be incredibly structurally grounded, yet simultaneously very fluid, like the classic saying, solid as a mountain, move like a great river.
Solid but fluid, that's the challenge.
That's the essence. And physiologically, there's a key reason you don't push beginners hard in drills like Tingjin.
Why is that?
Because it triggers the fight or flight reflex. Their body tenses up automatically. The goal instead is to train the body to release that tension, to switch off that flexor reflex, and build true internal connection without that instinctive resistance.
So you're training a different kind of response.
A much deeper, more controlled response.
That makes sense. You also mentioned the difference between cross hands, the older competition style, and modern push hands.
Yeah, cross hands was apparently the original way they competed, but it involved grabbing, which could be dangerous. Modern push hands evolved from that. And Sifu had this saying that captures the goal really well.
What was that?
You need to be 4 ounces, but you need to be 1,000 pounds as well.
4 ounces and 1,000 pounds. How does that work?
It means you need that incredible sensitivity, the 4 ounces to feel and yield. But you also need the structural integrity and connection on the 1,000 pounds to contain incoming force, to match their momentum and move with it, redirecting it, not just collapsing or being pushed over. It's not just about being soft.
It's active yielding with structure.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And something really crucial, which the source says is almost a virtually lost connection today,
What's that?
is that any weaknesses you find in your push hands, they're meant to be fixed within your Tai Chi form practice.
So the form isn't separate?
Not at all. It's the laboratory. Problems in push hands, especially issues with yielding or grounding, point directly back to needing more work on the legs and the waist within the solo form. It's a completely integrated system.
Everything connects back. Okay, so as Damon went deeper, he got into these really advanced internal concepts. Let's try and unpack some of those. First up, Jinyin, G-I-N-I-O-N.
Jinyin, yeah. Described as a closed-door technique. It involves very specific wrist angles, but it's really about a full-body connection, especially this idea of the wrist-foot connection.
Wrist-foot connection, how does that work?
It's about creating an unbroken kinetic chain. Power isn't just generated locally, like in the arm. It comes from the ground, travels through the correctly aligned body structure, and is expressed through the limb, like the wrist. The wrist angle is just the final gate for that whole body power.
So the whole body is involved in even a small wrist movement.
Ideally, yes. That's the internal goal. It's a fundamental shift, which then connects to the role of fascia.
Okay, fascia. We hear that word more often now. What is it and why is it key here?
Fascia is basically this connective tissue, like a thin, lubricating film between layers of muscle and other tissues. It allows everything to slide and glide smoothly.
Like internal lubrication.
Exactly. And Tai Chi training, especially the emphasis on opening joints and releasing tension, Sung, directly affects these fascial planes. Healthy fascia means smoother, more integrated, and powerful movement. Unhealthy, sticky fascia restricts movement.
So training keeps the fascia healthy and allows power to transmit better.
Precisely. Then you have phaging.
Right, phaging, often described as explosive power, almost like plyometrics.
Yeah, that's a decent comparison. Phaging is about developing tensile strength, the ability of muscles, tendons, ligaments to withstand and release force rapidly, like a spring.
Why is that important? Isn't Tai Chi supposed to be slow?
It is, but it also needs the capacity for explosive power. Developing phaging is crucial for actual martial application. You can't apply real force effectively without it unless your opponent is just letting you. It also strengthens the tissues, preventing injury, and helps hugely with things like fall prevention as you get older.
So it's structure and power combined. Okay, next concept, Jin, G-I-N. Sounds like Jinyin.
It does sound similar, but it's distinct. Jin is often translated as earth energy or internal power generated from the earth.
How is that different from Jinyin's whole body connection?
Jinyin is more about the internal alignment and the pathway. Jin is about actively drawing power up from the ground by rooting and pushing against the earth, then releasing that energy through the body, often visualized as releasing gravitational lines. It's especially crucial in the opening and closing phases of the forms, establishing that root.
So connecting to the ground as a power source.
Yes. And finally, there's this ideal state they aim for, Qunan Shanzong.
Okay, what does that translate to?
Roughly, solid body or steel wrapped in cotton. This is the state where if someone pushes or hits you, they kind of bounce off. You're solid, rooted, connected.
How is that different from just being tense?
It's not tense, it's connected and rooted. The source contrasts it with Pong, which is sometimes described as just an illusion of expansion, a soft yielding that doesn't necessarily redirect force effectively. Qunan Shanzong isn't about absorbing, it's about instantly redirecting that incoming force because your structure is so integrated and grounded. You're immovable but still fluid.
Immovable yet fluid. Back to that paradox.
Always back to the paradox.
And what's really telling is that after, 15 or 16 years of this intense training, then Sifu started teaching Damon single movement drills.
Right. And these weren't basic combat drills. They were specifically designed to improve health, build strength and stamina, refine focus, leading to this fluid, focused body. Sifu apparently used the phrase, aim small, miss small, Focus on the tiny detail.
Refining the core engine, essentially.
Exactly.
The level of dedication here is just staggering. Damon actually structured his life, developing resources like real estate and his therapy practice, just so he could afford to travel to China.
Yeah, 1, 2, 3 times a year or more, the source says. Accompanying Sifu and his son James on tours across Asia. Sometimes 6, 8 weeks a year, just following them, training, assisting.
That's incredible commitment, and that led to a shift in the dynamic too, right, with Sifu's son James?
It did. As Sifu got older, Damon naturally started spending more training time with James. They were closer in age, shared this intense journey. James became like a best friend, a training brother, really.
Which must have brought its own cultural nuances, training alongside the master's son.
Oh, absolutely. And this leads to some fascinating and sometimes painful cultural insights around saving face.
Like the sternum incident.
Exactly. Damon told this story where, during a workshop, he pushed James pretty hard in front of maybe 60 people. James, feeling embarrassed or needing to assert himself, apparently elbowed Damon back and actually cracked his sternum.
Ouch. Just from embarrassment.
It sounds extreme, but it highlights how critical face and hierarchy can be. It connects to an even bigger story about Mr. Watson, Sifu's own teacher.
What happened there?
Watson apparently had a major falling out with his instructor simply because he questioned why the instructor's son wasn't competing or fighting publicly, asking something like, "How come Simon doesn't go into the ring?"
That was enough to cause a break.
Yes. It was seen as a deep offense, questioning the family's ability or honor. It ended their teacher-student relationship right there. It really underscores the intense cultural sensitivity around family, respect, and public perception.
Wow. Heavy stuff. But despite these complexities, Damon and James gained huge recognition in China, didn't they?
They really did. The source describes them as achieving almost rock star status, getting interviewed on TV in major cities like Luoyang, Beijing, Taiwan, demonstrating the art, representing the lineage. It shows the broad appeal Tai Chi has there.
So they became quite prominent figures.
Very. And interestingly, this wasn't just about them showing off. It reflected a constant learning environment. Apparently, even established so-called masters would sometimes attend their workshops.
Really? Masters attending their workshops?
Yeah, which signifies that in that traditional mindset, learning never stops. Everyone is still a student in some way. There's a humility there, even at the highest levels.
Always more to learn. And this journey eventually led Damon back to competition, right, in the 2010s?
It did. Specifically the 2012 Hong Kong Wushu Festival. And the story there is pretty intense too.
What happened?
He apparently faced an opponent from another branch of the Yang family and, as the source puts it, essentially annihilated him quite quickly, using their connected direct methods. But he got fouled out for being too aggressive or effective within the rules of that specific competition.
Fouled out for winning too decisively.
Seems like it. But then he was reinstated the next day for the medal rounds, though he chose not to compete further. It just highlights the, let's say, assertive and deeply connected nature of their particular training style. It wasn't just about playing patty cake.
It was about real application of the principles.
Exactly. Direct-rooted, connected power.
So, reflecting on this whole journey, what's the big takeaway?
I think if we connect this to the bigger picture, Damon's story powerfully illustrates that mastery, especially in these traditional arts, isn't about reaching some final destination and planting a flag.
It's not an endpoint?
Not at all. It's about continuously challenging yourself, challenging your own understanding, maybe even respectfully challenging your teachers like he did. It's a relentless, lifelong pursuit of deeper understanding, always pushing your own boundaries.
Always learning, always evolving.
At the essence of it.
So what does this all mean for you listening to this? Perhaps it's this. True learning, maybe in anything, isn't just about piling up facts or collecting techniques. Sometimes, maybe often, it's about unlearning.
Letting go of preconceptions.
Right. Unlearning those ingrained habits, embracing discomfort, pushing past what you think you know. Recognizing that the deepest truths, the real insights, often lie where that hard personal commitment meets these, well, universal principles of physics, of the human body, of connection.
It's a powerful combination.
So maybe the question to leave you with is, what aspect of your own learning journey, whatever it might be, could benefit from that unlearning approach, that willingness to question, to feel awkward, to rebuild from the ground up?